I noticed her before she even spoke, the kind of presence that rearranges a room just by being in it. She didn't rush, didn't fidget. She moved like someone who'd already survived the noise and no longer needed to prove she belonged. She was the flight attendant, but she didn't have the practiced brightness most of them wear. Her smile was smaller, quieter, the kind that made you feel like it was meant only for you. I was in seat 14C. She stopped in my row to check the overhead bin, her sleeve brushing my shoulder. That simple contact, the fabric of her uniform grazing my arm, felt deliberate, though I knew it wasn't. Still, I couldn't look away. "Fasten your seatbelt," she said, voice low, even but with something in it that caught. "Eu beet stup idlu fast." My hands fumbled with the buckle, and she almost smiled. Not mocking, more like she noticed the effort. She moved on, checking other passengers, but I could still feel her beside me, even when she was 3 rows away. That's what unnerved me. Her absence felt like a presence, too. When she came back down the aisle before takeoff, our eyes met again. I expected her to look away first, but she didn't. Not until someone called for help with a bag. It wasn't love. Not even attraction in the obvious way. It was something quieter, a pull that made no sense, like hearing your name whispered in a crowded room. Midway through the flight, I saw her again. She was crouched near an older couple, helping them with water. Her voice was softer now, almost a whisper. The plane hummed around her, white noise that made everything else feel suspended. When she stood, she caught me looking. I looked away too late. She didn't smile this time, just tilted her head slightly, like she was deciding whether to speak. Then she walked over. "Coffee?" she asked. "Sure," I said, though I didn't even like plain coffee. When she handed me the cup, our fingers touched. Barely, but it was enough to start that silent current again, the kind that doesn't show on faces, only in the small, involuntary shift of breath. Her eyes lingered a second too long, hazel with a hint of fatigue, like she'd been awake longer than anyone should be. "You're quiet," she said finally. I shrugged. "You talk enough for both of us." That got her to laugh, quietly from her chest. But then something changed in her expression, just for a heartbeat. The laughter faded before it reached her eyes. "I used to," she said, half to herself. The cabin lights dimmed. A child cried somewhere in the back. The sound filled the space between us until she finally stood straight and adjusted her sleeve. "Enjoy your flight," she said, toned back to neutral, as if she'd pulled a curtain shut. But as she turned, I noticed her hand tremble just slightly, fingers brushing against the metal of the galley door before she steadied herself. An hour later, the seatbelt light flicked on. Turbulence. Passengers stirred awake. She came down the aisle again, calm but focused, checking belts, reassuring faces. When she reached me, the plane jolted. My cup slid, spilling a line of coffee down the tray. She caught it midair, her hand landing over mine to steady it. We both froze. The cabin tilted with another shake, and her palm pressed against the back of my hand. Neither of us moved. Then the speaker crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated." But she didn't move her hand. Not yet. Her eyes flicked to mine, wide and unreadable. And then, just as quickly, she stood, straightened, and walked away, leaving her warmth behind, and every ounce of my control with it. The turbulence had passed, but something in me hadn't settled. Every time she walked by, I caught myself watching the space she left behind, the faint trace of her perfume, that soft citrus and warm skin mix that clung to the aisle even after she was gone. I told myself to stop looking. She was twice my age, probably with a life already built, stories I couldn't fit into. But then she laughed again, not at me, not even near me, and I found myself wanting to be the reason. When she finally stopped by my seat again, it wasn't part of her routine. The cabin was dark, most passengers asleep, screens glowing blue in the shadows. She leaned closer than necessary. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Trying," I said. "Not great at pretending." A faint smile. "That makes 2 of us." Her voice was quieter now, stripped of the professional calm. I could hear the fatigue in it, or maybe something like sadness. "You work a lot of these red eyes?" I asked. "Only when I can't sleep at home," she said, eyes on the empty aisle ahead. Then she caught herself and straightened, like she'd said too much. There it was, the small fracture in her poise. And I wanted to know what lived behind it. She lingered beside me longer than she should have. The hum of the engines filled the pauses between us. I saw her fingers rest on the edge of my seat, steady, graceful. Long flight. I asked. It's always long when you can't stop thinking, she said. Then she blinked, looked down, and added, about work, I mean. But it wasn't about work. I knew it. I wanted to ask what she thought about when the cabin went dark and no one was watching. But I didn't. Instead, I asked, do you ever sit down? She hesitated, then lowered herself into the aisle seat across from me. It felt almost illicit. Her uniform, the quiet, the rows of sleeping strangers around us. She sighed softly, rubbing her wrists. You'd be surprised how heavy a smile gets after 10 hours. Her words were simple, but the way she said them, low, tired, unguarded, made something inside me shift. I didn't say anything. I just watched her fingers trace the rim of her water cup. When she noticed me looking, she didn't pull away. Don't, she whispered. Don't what? Look at me like that. She said it softly, without anger, almost pleading, but she didn't move. Outside, lightning flickered behind a wall of clouds, a flash that painted her face in silver. In that instant, she looked both powerful and unbearably human. I wanted to reach out, to touch the side of her hand, to see if she'd let me. And I did, just barely. My fingers brushed hers. A second of warmth, maybe less. But she didn't pull back. Then the intercom buzzed again, sharp and sudden. She flinched, stood too quickly, smoothing her skirt as if nothing had happened. Seatbelt check, she murmured, almost apologetic. But as she walked away, her hand brushed the back of my chair, a deliberate, lingering drag of her fingertips that said more than either of us could afford to. And I knew then, whatever this was, it wasn't over. The plane touched down just before sunrise, the kind of dull gray morning that made everything feel half real. Passengers stirred, collecting their things. She moved through the aisle again, back in her composed rhythm. Every step deliberate, every smile rehearsed. I tried to match her calm, but when her eyes caught mine, the space between us felt too narrow for air. She paused by my seat. You'll miss your connection if you don't move, she said, tone brisk. But her hand stayed on the top of my seat longer than it needed to. I'll take my chances, I said. That earned me the smallest flicker of something behind her eyes. Half a warning, half a pull. At the gate, people scattered in different directions. I waited. I don't even know why. Maybe I thought she'd look back once. She didn't. Then, when most of the crowd had disappeared, I saw her again by the terminal window. She wasn't supposed to notice me, but she did. Her shoulders rose slightly, as if she were exhaling something heavy. Then she turned and walked over. You missed your flight, she said. I guess I did. That's inconvenient. We both stood there, unsure what to do with the air between us. She had changed out of her uniform, plain black clothes now, hair slightly undone. She looked softer, younger somehow, but still guarded. Coffee? I asked. She hesitated. That's not a good idea. But you want to? Her mouth opened like she might argue, but then she just nodded, barely. Just coffee, she said, almost convincing herself. We found a quiet corner of the airport cafe. The morning crowd buzzed faintly in the background. She sat across from me, close enough that our knees nearly touched under the table. Do you always chase after flight attendants? She asked, trying for humor. Only the ones who tell me to fasten my seatbelt. Her laugh was soft, but it didn't last. She glanced at the window, at nothing in particular. You shouldn't. I mean, people notice things. Let them, I said. She looked at me again, really looked, and that was when the balance tilted. The moment stretched thin. She leaned forward slightly, her hand resting on the table between us. I didn't move, afraid to break it. A vibration broke the silence, her phone lighting up between us. A message, just a name on the screen, David. Her eyes dropped to it, then quickly away. She turned the phone face down. Your husband? I asked before I could stop myself. She blinked, startled, then sighed. Ex, she said. Mostly. She rubbed the back of her neck, looked at me again. This shouldn't be happening. It isn't, I said, but we both knew it was. Someone called her name, another attendant. waving from the hallway. She stood too fast, the chair scraping the floor. "I have to go," she said. She started to turn, but I reached out and caught her wrist. Light, not enough to stop her, just enough to make her pause. She didn't pull away. Her pulse was fast beneath my fingers. Then she whispered, barely audible, "You have no idea what you're doing." And she was gone, leaving my hand empty and my heart beating like I had already fallen. Rain hammered the city that night, slicking the sidewalks and blurring the lights outside the airport hotel. I wasn't supposed to see her again. She was just a face from a flight, a memory to file away. But there she was at the end of the lobby bar, hair damp, sleeves rolled up, a glass of something amber in her hand. She noticed me before I could pretend not to notice her. A slow exhale, a hint of a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You again," she said, her voice quiet but laced with something like surrender. "Coincidence," I said, though neither of us believed it. We sat together in silence for a while, the air thick with things we weren't ready to say. She loosened the tie around her wrist that had held her hair back, letting it fall in uneven strands. I watched the way her fingers shook when she lifted her glass. "You shouldn't be here," she said finally. "Neither should you." Her laugh was small, tired. "You have no idea how messy I am." "I don't care." "Yes, you do," she whispered. "You just don't know it yet." She turned toward me then, close enough that I could smell her skin, the faint trace of rain mixed with something floral and familiar. The bartender dropped a glass somewhere down the counter, and she flinched, instinctively leaning toward me. My hand moved without thought, brushing a damp strand of hair away from her cheek. Her breath caught, sharp and unsteady. "Don't," she said, but she didn't move back. "Tell me to stop," I murmured. She didn't. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Her eyes searched mine, not looking for answers, but permission. Then she said it, soft and breaking. "You make me forget how old I am." The words hit something in me I couldn't name. I reached for her hand. She let me hold it, but her fingers barely curled around mine. "It's not about that," I said. "It never was." Her gaze dropped to our hands, his younger, hers lined at the edges but strong. She swallowed hard. "It'll ruin you," she whispered. "Or me. Maybe both." Something like fear flickered across her face, but underneath it was something else. Want, raw and unguarded. The air shifted. She leaned forward, eyes half closed, breath trembling against my cheek. I felt the warmth of her body just inches from mine. Every sound in the room, the hum of lights, the faint clink of ice, fell away. Then came the confession, barely audible, her lips almost touching my ear. "I haven't wanted someone like this in years." The words hung there, heavy, electric, final. I turned toward her, close enough to see the reflection of the rain in her eyes, close enough to feel her breath stall. We hovered there, suspended in the smallest distance, her hand on my jaw, my thumb brushing her wrist, the kiss inevitable, unstoppable, and then her phone rang. The screen lit up between us. "David." She froze. The light flickered against her face, and whatever softness had lived there a second ago hardened into something else. Guilt, maybe, or survival. Neither of us moved. The phone rang again. Her hand slipped from my face. But she didn't leave. Not yet. She just whispered, almost breaking, "If I stay, I won't stop." And the silence that followed said everything neither of us could. She didn't answer the call. She just let it ring out, her eyes fixed on the screen until the light dimmed and the sound died. Then she set the phone face down between us, the silence stretching like a wound that wouldn't close. "You said X," I said quietly. She blinked once, slowly. "I did, but he still calls." She nodded barely. "He doesn't know how to stop. Or maybe I don't." There was no accusation in my voice, but something in hers cracked. "It's complicated," she said, the words small and useless. I should have let it go, but I couldn't. "You still see him." "I still owe him," she said. "Not love, just pieces of myself I never got back." The rain outside grew heavier, streaking the windows like falling glass. She looked out at it, as if searching for a way through. "Does he know you're here?" I asked. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp caught. "No. So you lit." She flinched, not from anger, but from truth. Not to you, she said. To myself. Her voice shook just slightly, and that small tremor did more than any confession could. I watched her chest rise and fall, too fast. The rhythm of her breath tangled with mine in the narrow space between us. When she finally met my eyes again, there was no distance left. I shouldn't have come down to the bar, she said. I just wanted to see if it still mattered. What if someone could still look at me like that? Her hand trembled when she reached for her glass. I covered it with mine. She froze, then exhaled, the sound uneven. You're not a game, I said. You know that. She laughed once, quiet and broken. Everything turns into one eventually. The air between us thickened. She leaned closer, not to kiss me, but to whisper, "You make me remember who I was before I started apologizing for wanting things." That undid me. I turned my palm upward, our fingers interlacing, and she didn't pull away. Then, a sound behind us. A voice. "Clara." She went completely still. A man stood at the edge of the bar, his jacket wet, suitcase in hand. Older, the kind of face that carried years of familiarity. Her husband, or what was left of him. Her hand slipped from mine instantly, landing in her lap. She didn't look at me, not even once, just stared past him as if calculating what story she'd have to tell to make this moment disappear. "I didn't know you were still in town," he said, his voice thin, uncertain. "I had a delay," she managed. Her body said everything her words didn't. The straightened spine, the clenched jaw, the half-second she took to steady her breath before standing. He turned toward me then. "You two know each other?" I opened my mouth, but she cut me off. "He's a passenger. That's all. That's all." Her voice was calm, professional again, every trace of warmth erased. But when she brushed past me to leave, her fingers grazed mine, quick, trembling, deliberate. A message hidden in motion. And that single touch said what the words couldn't. "Don't follow me." Not yet. I watched her walk away, each step tight, purposeful, the practiced walk of a woman rebuilding the wall she just let fall. But I already knew she wouldn't be able to keep it up for long, because lies can hold back words, but never what the body remembers. The next day passed in fragments, half-slept hours, coffee gone cold, her name looping through my head like a pulse I couldn't turn off. I told myself to forget her. She was married, older, off-limits. But every time I replayed that moment, her fingers slipping from mine, the tremor in her voice, it felt less like a warning and more like an unfinished sentence. By evening, I gave in. I found her in the hotel's crew lounge, dimly lit and half-empty. She stood by the vending machine, still in uniform, staring at nothing. The sight of her, tired, composed, fragile, cut through every reason I had to walk away. She saw me in the reflection of the glass and didn't turn. "You shouldn't be here," she said, same words as before. But this time, they sounded like an invitation. I tried not to be. A pause. The faint hum of the vending machine filled the silence. "Does he know you're staying here?" I asked. "No." She turned then, eyes red at the edges. "He doesn't ask anymore." I took a slow step closer. "And what about you? Do you still answer?" She smiled, soft, painful. "Only when I want to lie." Her voice cracked on the last word. Something inside me broke with it. The space between us dissolved. She didn't move when I reached up, fingers brushing her hair back, tracing the line of her jaw. Her breath shivered against my wrist. "Clara," I said, barely a whisper. "Don't," she murmured. "Please." But her body didn't agree. She tilted her face toward me, eyes closing for just a second too long. It wasn't about lust. It wasn't even about love. It was about gravity, the pull of two people who'd spent too long pretending they weren't lonely. I stepped closer. The air changed, charged heavy. My voice trembled when I said, "Tell me to go." She opened her eyes, met mine, and said, "I can't." We stood there, inches apart, the room shrinking to the sound of our breathing. Every movement felt dangerous. The brush of her sleeve against my chest, the way her hand lifted, then hesitated midair. "I thought I was done wanting things that could hurt me," she whispered. "You're not," I said. Her lips parted, not for words this time, but for air. I could feel the heat of her breath when she said, then this is going to ruin us. Maybe that's what it takes. A single heartbeat passed. Two. And then she leaned in, so close that the world blurred, so close that everything I'd been holding back finally slipped away. Her forehead rested against mine. Neither of us moved. We didn't need to. The moment was the choice, the surrender, the understanding. She exhaled, a small, broken sound. You'll forget me someday. Not this, I said. Never this. Her hand found mine. Steady now, no tremor, no hiding. And for the first time, the silence between us didn't ache. It simply existed, like something finally at peace, even if only for tonight. Morning came slow, gray light slipping through the hotel curtains. The city outside was already alive. Horns, footsteps, the hum of another day starting. But inside the room, it was quiet. She sat on the edge of the bed, half-dressed, hair loose around her face. I watched her from where I stood, leaning against the window. The glass was cold. My chest was not. No one spoke for a long time. There was nothing left to hide behind. Not uniforms, not titles, not the space between rows of airplane seats. Finally, she said, I thought I'd wake up regretting this. Do you? She shook her head slowly. No, just surprised I let myself feel something again. I crossed the room and sat beside her. Our shoulders touched, barely, and the contact felt louder than any words we'd said. She smiled, small but real. You make it sound like that's a bad thing, I said. It's not bad, she whispered. It's just real. And that's scarier. I reached for her hand. She hesitated, reflex, then let our fingers intertwine. Her thumb brushed across mine, light and deliberate. It was the kind of touch that said everything we'd been afraid to. I don't know what happens next, she said. My life's tangled. So is mine, I said. But maybe that's okay. She laughed softly, the sound faint but unguarded. You really think we can make sense of this? No, I said, smiling. But I think we can mean it. Her eyes softened. She leaned in, resting her head against my shoulder. The quiet wrapped around us again, this time not as a wall, but a shelter. Outside, the rain had stopped. A thin slice of sun broke through the clouds, cutting across the room, catching the faint silver in her hair. She closed her eyes and breathed out, the sound closer to peace than anything I'd heard from her before. After a while, she said, You should go. Flights don't wait. I'll take the next one. You'll miss it again, she teased. Worth it, I said. She looked up at me, amusement and tenderness folded together in her expression. Then she lifted a hand and traced the side of my face, thumb pausing near my mouth. If I kiss you now, she murmured, I'll never stop thinking about it. Then don't stop. So she didn't. It wasn't a perfect kiss, too slow, a little trembling, too full of everything we tried not to say. But it felt true. When she finally pulled away, she stayed close, forehead resting against mine. For once, there were no half-truths left between us. Just breath, warmth, the simple, quiet knowing that whatever this was, it mattered. She smiled then, tired, beautiful, free. You'll be okay, she said. So will you. Her fingers squeezed mine once before letting go. And as I walked toward the door, I looked back just once, enough to see her watching me, calm, no longer hiding. Whatever came next didn't matter. We'd found something real, even if it only lived in this moment. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?